My name is Ava Morgan, and until last year, everyone believed I lived a perfect life. The daughter of Richard Morgan, a billionaire CEO known more for his ego than his empire. People assumed I grew up spoiled, pampered, and protected. They were wrong. Dad never cared about me. He cared about image, about power, about control. And nothing proved that more than what happened after my wedding. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I married Ethan Clark, a quiet, hardworking mechanic from a modest family in Boise, Idaho, a man who treated me with more kindness than my father ever had. But to Dad, Ethan was beneath us. At the reception, while everyone was dancing and laughing, Dad pulled me aside, jaw clenched, eyes full of disgust. "Ava," he said sharply, "you've embarrassed this family. I will not support a daughter who marries down." I froze. "Dad." He held up a hand. "No, this is your choice. From this moment forward, you're on your own. Don't ask me for anything again." Those final words sliced through me. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of him. Instead, I walked back into my wedding with a smile plastered on my face, pretending nothing had shattered inside me. But the humiliation didn't end there. 2 days later, Dad kept his word. He removed me from every family account. My credit cards froze. My health insurance disappeared. Even my phone line stopped working. And just like that, the billionaire's daughter had nothing. Ethan held me as I broke down that night. "I'll take care of us," he whispered. "I promise." I believed him. What I didn't know was that the job he would soon take, the job my father never saw coming, would leave my entire family speechless. The first week after the wedding felt like stepping into two different worlds, the one my father destroyed and the one Ethan and I were trying to build from scratch. We moved into Ethan's small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Boise. It wasn't fancy. No marble floors, no private elevators, no house staff. But it was the first place in my life where I felt safe. Still, the adjustment was sharp. I was used to having a car, a driver, a closet full of designer clothes. Suddenly, I was budgeting groceries, cooking meals, and learning how to stretch every dollar. I didn't complain. Not once. I just kept telling myself, he cut me off, but he didn't break me. Ethan worked long hours at the auto shop, sometimes 12, 14 hours straight. He came home with grease on his hands and exhaustion in his eyes, but he always smiled at me. "We'll be fine," he'd say. "I just need a better job." But finding one wasn't easy. One morning, he came back frustrated after another failed interview. "They look at my resume and see mechanic, nothing more," he muttered. "I want to give you the life you deserve." I took his hands. "Ethan, I married you, not a lifestyle. We'll grow together." Meanwhile, my father made sure everyone knew he had washed his hands of me. Relatives stopped calling. My childhood friends distanced themselves. Even the Morgan Foundation removed my name from the board. I felt invisible, erased, but every night, Ethan sat beside me at the small kitchen table, studying job listings, rewriting his resume, refusing to give up. I didn't know it yet, but he was preparing for something big, something life-changing, something that would flip the power dynamic of my entire family. 2 months into our new life, everything felt like a test. One I refused to fail, even on the hardest days. Ethan kept searching for better work, sending out application after application. Most companies didn't even reply. A few offered interviews, but none took him seriously beyond basic mechanic. Still, he kept trying. One Thursday afternoon, while I was reorganizing our tiny closet, Ethan burst through the door, breathless, eyes wide, holding a crumpled piece of paper. "Ava, I think something happened." My heart skipped. "What is it?" He handed me a business card. Wilder Automotive Research and Technology. $1 billion engineering corporation. Top tier. Impossible to get into. Someone from their HR department saw my resume online, Ethan said. They want to interview me tomorrow. I blinked. Ethan, that company recruits engineers, designers, CEOs' sons, not mechanics. He nodded. I know. But they said they were impressed by the technical notes I added. They said I think differently. For the first time in weeks, I saw a spark in his eyes, something bright, steady, unshakable. I touched his cheek. Then show them who you are. He kissed my forehead slowly, whispering, For you, Ava. I'll rise. The next morning, he left early for the interview, wearing his only formal shirt, the one we ironed 3 times to hide the faded lines. Hours passed. I paced the apartment, unable to sit still. Had they rejected him? Did he feel out of place? Did he feel like I used to feel at my father's corporate events? Small, unseen. Then at 3:41 p.m., the door swung open. Ethan walked in silently, his face unreadable. My chest tightened. What happened? I whispered. He took my hands gently. Ava, they want me back for a second interview. And they said it looks promising. Really promising. My breath caught. This wasn't promising. It was the beginning at something my father never expected. Our quiet rise. The following week felt like living inside a dream, the kind you're afraid to wake up from. Ethan prepared for the second interview like his entire life depended on it. In many ways, it did. He stayed up late, watching engineering lectures, studying design principles, reading research papers, learning software he'd never touched before. I sat beside him every night, helping however I could, printing materials, timing his practice answers, boosting his confidence whenever doubt crept in. You're brilliant, I told him. You just never had the stage to prove it. He squeezed my hand. With you, I finally feel like I can. The second interview was a panel. 5 executives, 3 hours. Ethan came home drained, but hopeful. They asked questions I didn't expect, he said, removing his shoes slowly. Real technical stuff, but I answered everything honestly. I told them how I fix problems in the shop, how I think with my hands first, then my head. I smiled. That's what makes you different. 3 days later, he received an email. We are pleased to invite you to the final stage of our hiring process. Final stage. My heart raced. That's huge, Ethan. He nodded, stunned. They want me to meet the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, second in command of the entire corporation. A man with influence, power, reach. The very kind of man my father used to intimidate people with. But now, someone of that caliber wanted to meet my husband. Even I couldn't fully process it. The night before the final interview, Ethan wrapped his arms around me while we lay in bed. Ava, if I get this job, everything will change. I rested my forehead against his. Everything is already changing. You're rising, and I'm right here with you. Neither of us knew it then, but the job he was about to step into would pull him into a world so big, it would shake my father's empire without him even realizing it. The day of Ethan's final interview felt like a storm waiting to break, silent, heavy, electric. He wore the same ironed shirt, the same polished shoes, the same nervous but hopeful smile. But something about him felt different now. He wasn't the mechanic trying to survive. He was the man stepping into his future. He left at 8 a.m. I couldn't sit still. I cleaned. I reorganized drawers. I made coffee twice. I stared at my phone like it held oxygen. At 11:23 a.m., it buzzed. A single text from Ethan. On my way home, we need to talk. My heart twisted. Those words could mean anything. He walked into the apartment 10 minutes later, slow, shoulders tense, face unreadable. He took a deep breath, reached into his jacket pocket, and placed an envelope on the table. I stared at it. A job offer? I whispered. He nodded. Not just any offer. Inside was a contract. Thick, detailed, stamped with corporate seal. Position: Lead Mechanical Innovation Specialist. Salary: $210,000 a year. Benefits: full, company housing assistance, paid relocation, career track, executive development. I covered my mouth with both hands. Ethan, this is unbelievable. He pulled me into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. They said they've never seen anyone think like me. They want to fast-track me into leadership. Ava, I can finally give us a real future. I held him tightly. You already did. But the shock didn't end there. At the bottom of the contract was a note handwritten by the COO. Your background reminds me of my early years. Men like you build companies. Men like your father-in-law only inherit them. I froze. He knew. He knew exactly who my father was. And he still chose Ethan. The foundation of my father's ego just cracked. 2 months later, everything had changed. We moved into a beautiful company-provided townhouse near the Wilder Automotive headquarters. Modern, bright, and nothing like the cramped apartment we started in. It wasn't luxury from my father's world. It was earned, honest, peaceful. Ethan thrived. He woke up early, came home late, but his eyes always sparkled with excitement instead of exhaustion. He led projects, solved problems the engineers struggled with, and impressed everyone with his instinctive mechanical mind. Every evening he'd walk through the door saying, Ava, you won't believe what I worked on today. And I'd listen, proud in a way I never felt growing up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the CEO's daughter. I was simply the wife of a man who built his own path. Meanwhile, my father's empire began cracking. It started subtly. A shareholder pulled out. A project stalled. A partnership froze. A contract was delayed. Dad panicked, not because the company was failing, but because he didn't know why it was happening. But I knew one thing he didn't. Wilder Automotive Research and Technology, my husband's new company, was one of the biggest competitors my father's corporation had underestimated for years. And now Ethan was quickly becoming a rising name inside that very competitor. He was in rooms my father didn't even know existed. He was meeting people my father once bragged about controlling. He was gaining influence my father couldn't measure. One evening, Ethan casually mentioned, the board invited me to a networking summit next month. Major CEOs will be there. My heart stopped. Which CEOs? He opened the email. The first name listed was Richard Morgan, my father. Ethan continued, unaware of the tremor inside me. They want us to meet their families, too. You'll come with me, right? I swallowed hard, because my father cut me off at my wedding, but fate was about to bring me back into his world, not as his dependent, but as the wife of the man he couldn't ignore. The weeks leading up to the corporate summit felt unreal. Like two worlds I had spent my whole life keeping apart were finally about to collide. Ethan was thrilled. My father had no idea. Every night, Ethan practiced his presentation in the living room, while I helped him smooth out his talking points. His technical brilliance amazed me. But what amazed me more was how naturally he stepped into leadership. He wasn't the mechanic my father mocked. He wasn't the man my father dismissed. He was becoming someone powerful and respected. One evening while Ethan rehearsed, my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Meredith, the one person in the Morgan family who still spoke to me. Your father is preparing a big speech for the summit. He's bragging about a new auto tech partnership he expects to secure. I froze. Auto tech partnership. With Wilder Automotive? It hit me instantly. My father thought Wilder would bow to him. He thought his company still had the influence. He thought he could walk into that summit and dominate the room, without realizing the man leading the technical side was my husband. The irony felt almost cruel. I typed back, "Does he know I'll be there?" She replied, "No. He assumes you're living quietly somewhere with your mechanic husband." Mechanic husband. The phrase didn't sting anymore. It felt like a badge of honor. Later that night, Ethan wrapped his arms around me. "Are you nervous about seeing your dad again?" he asked softly. I paused. "It's not seeing him that scares me. It's him seeing you." He kissed my forehead. "Whatever happens, we face it together." I nodded, though my heart thudded. My father thought cutting me off made me disappear. He never imagined the next time he saw me, my chill self, I would be standing beside the man who could change the entire direction of his empire. The morning of the summit arrived cold and sharp, the kind of air that wakes every nerve in your body. Ethan looked stunning in his tailored suit, the one his company gifted him after his promotion. He adjusted his tie nervously, but his eyes shone with determination. "You ready?" he asked. "For anything," I replied, and I meant it. We entered the massive glass building where the event was being held. Executives, investors, and CEOs filled the lobby, exchanging fake laughs and firm handshakes. Ethan fit into this world far more naturally than I ever did. As we walked in, heads turned, not toward me, but toward him. "Is that Clark?" "That's the new lead from Wilder. He's the one working on the propulsion redesign." I watched with quiet pride as people approached him, eager to speak, eager to connect. Then I heard a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Eva?" My blood ran cold. I turned. My father stood a few steps away. Sharp suit, cold eyes, arrogance stitched into every inch of his posture. He looked exactly the same, except for the shock on his face. "Ava," he repeated, "what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, the COO of Wilder approached us with a wide smile. "There you two are. Richard, let me introduce you to one of the brightest, rising talents in the industry." Dad blinked. The COO continued proudly. "This is Ethan Clark, our lead mechanical innovation specialist, and his wife, Ava Clark." Silence. My father's jaw flexed. His eyes darted between me and Ethan like he couldn't comprehend the connection. You work for Wilder?" Dad finally asked Ethan, voice tight. Ethan smiled politely. "Yes, sir. And I'll be presenting a major advancement today." My father stiffened. He cut me off. He left me with nothing. He thought Ethan was beneath him. And now Ethan stood above him, in the one room he couldn't control. The auditorium filled quickly. CEOs, engineers, journalists, analysts. Cameras flashed as industry giants took their seats. Ethan sat in the front row with his team, while I stayed beside him, my hand resting on his. My father sat 3 rows behind us. The distance felt symbolic. A man who once towered over my life was now physically and professionally behind the husband he once mocked. When Ethan's name was announced, the entire room gave respectful applause. Not polite, not forced, earned. He stepped onto the stage with calm confidence, the kind that only comes from struggle, skill, and pure grit. "Good morning," he began, voice steady. "I'm Ethan Clark, and today I'll be presenting our new propulsion efficiency system, a breakthrough we believe will reshape the future of automotive engineering." Slides filled the screen, diagrams, test results, simulations. He explained complex concepts like he was telling a story, clear, precise, innovative. The audience leaned in, fascinated. Executives whispered. Journalists typed nonstop. Even from the corner of my eye, I saw my father's face. Shock, disbelief, and something he'd never shown toward Ethan before, respect. When Ethan finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Standing ovation. People rushed to him, shaking hands, congratulating him, exchanging cards. He wasn't just part of the industry anymore. He was becoming a name. Then something unexpected happened. The COO approached Ethan with a microphone. "Before we continue," he said, smiling, "I'd like to announce one more update." The room quieted. In recognition of his leadership, innovation, and exceptional contribution to the company, Wilder Automotive is officially promoting Ethan Clark to Director of Mechanical Systems Research. The applause echoed like thunder. I felt tears sting my eyes. Ethan turned toward me, stunned, overwhelmed, and mouthed, "For us." Behind us, my father didn't clap. He just sat frozen, watching the mechanic he once humiliated become a director in the very industry he ruled. For the first time in my life, the man with all the power wasn't my father. It was my husband. After the presentation, a formal reception was held in the lounge. Soft lighting, polished marble floors, champagne circulating on silver trays. Executives surrounded Ethan like he was the center of gravity. I watched him from a distance, overwhelmed with pride, but then I felt a familiar presence behind me. Ava, my father's voice, cold, controlled, but cracked around the edges. I turned slowly. He looked smaller, not physically, but in a way only a shattered ego reveals. "We need to talk," he said. I followed him to a quiet corridor. The moment we were alone, he spoke quickly, desperately trying to regain the authority he once held. "Why didn't you tell me he worked for Wilder?" he asked sharply. "You let me walk in there blind." I raised an eyebrow. "You cut me off, remember? You said I wasn't family." He flinched. "That was emotional. You know I didn't mean it." I stepped closer. "You meant every word." His jaw tightened. "You embarrassed me today, Ava. You made me look like a fool." "No," I said softly. "You did that to yourself." He blinked, stunned that I wasn't backing down. "Do you have any idea," he hissed, "how important this partnership is for my company?" I folded my arms. "I know, and it must hurt that the engineer you mocked, the husband you looked down on, the man you said wasn't worthy of me, is now in a higher position than half your executives." His nostrils flared. "You could have warned me." I shook my head. "You're not entitled to my life anymore, or to Ethan's success." Then I said the words I'd been holding for years. "You cut me off to punish me, but all you did was free me." For the first time in my life, he had no reply. The reception continued buzzing, but the hallway stayed silent as my father struggled to swallow his pride. His eyes darted toward the conference hall, where Ethan stood surrounded by industry leaders. He inhaled sharply. "Ava, I want you and Ethan to come home. We should rebuild the family. You belong with us." Us. The same us that abandoned me the moment I chose love over status. I met his gaze steadily. "No, Dad, I don't belong to you anymore." A flicker of panic crossed his face. Panic I had never seen in the mighty Richard Morgan, CEO. "You're making a mistake," he said. I smiled softly. "No, I finally stopped making them." Before he could respond, the COO of Wilder approached us. "Richard," he said politely, "I just received your company's proposal for the tech partnership." My father straightened. "Good. I trust it makes sense for both sides." The COO paused, then dropped the blow, the big blow. "Unfortunately, after reviewing internal recommendations, particularly from our new director, Wilder will not be moving forward with your corporation." My father's face strained of color. "Director, Ethan." He looked at me, stunned. You knew about this?" I shook my head. This wasn't revenge. This was performance. Ethan's work simply didn't align with your outdated systems. The COO added calmly, "We're moving toward innovation. Ethan understands that better than anyone." When he walked away, Ethan finally reached us. My father stared at him, the man he once dismissed, now the man who held the influence he desperately needed. Ethan offered a respectful nod. "Mr. Morgan." My father swallowed. "I misjudged you." Ethan's voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "You didn't misjudge me," he said. "You judged the old me, the one who hadn't been given a chance yet." Dad's lips trembled, but I didn't soften. Not this time. I slipped my hand into Ethan's. "We should go," I said. As we walked out of that grand building together, sunlight hit us like a blessing. Dad stood alone behind us, powerless, silent, watching the daughter he tried to break walk away stronger than ever. He cut me off, but I was the one who ended the story.